listening to this, and all the Palestinian people who might be listening to this, we I had I have had amazing visits to the Palestinian country, and one thing that is sure is that when I came to a Palestinian home and visited a family, I've never felt so much at home by the hospitality shown to me from the Palestinian people, even though the Palestinian people do not have a proper home that they can call their own.
Solidarity with the Palestinian people in their struggle for freedom and justice has been strong in Sweden since decades. When late Olof Palme was the Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme was the first European leader to welcome the late leader of the Palestinian people, Yasser Arafat, and Sweden was the first European country to recognize the state of Palestine. I have from Stockholm, the Swedish capital, Mr. Roshan Kahande, Social Democrat Activist and a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. Welcome, Roshan. I'm very much happy to have you on our program. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
And as you heard in my introduction, Mr. Roshan, that late Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme, ingrained the culture of solidarity in Sweden with all oppressed peoples on this planet, including the people of Palestine. How strong this Swedish culture still is?
I think it's a correct observation. Olof Palme most certainly created a solidarity with oppressed people around the world, not only, but of course, the Palestinian people. But this was also during the time of the Vietnam War, when he made sure to show his solidarity against the war, and very many other oppressed peoples around the world, but most certainly the Palestinians in their cause for freedom and justice. And I think it's fair to say that that solidarity still lives on in Sweden. I would say that a large part of the Swedish society feels very strongly for the Palestinian cause still.
Yes, Roshan, when we talk about the relationship between the Social Democratic Party in Sweden and the people of Palestine and Fatah movement in particular, this relationship is still very strong, and it is one of the legacies of Olof Palme. May you tell us more about this relationship and how it's growing stronger and stronger between the Palestinian people and the Social Democrats?
Well, I mean, as we stated from Olof Palme and forward, the solidarity with the Palestinian people has been strong within the Social Democratic Party of Sweden, but also many other movements, and by most people in general, I would say. And I guess that relationship is still active and strong, and I hope that it is fruitful. I have not been a part of the specific exchanges in some time, but I still know that we have a strong voice from the Social Democratic Party of solidarity with the Palestinian people continuously. Not to mention just our former foreign minister, Mrs. Margot Wallström, also was the first European leader to acknowledge Palestine as an independent state back in 2014. So it says a lot.
Yeah, and Roshan, you're talking about exchange of programs between the Social Democratic Party and the people of Palestine, and you were part of these programs. You came to Palestine several times, and we met here in Ramallah, Bethlehem, and other Palestinian cities and refugee camps. So tell us and our audience what things you liked about Palestine as a country and as a people.
Yeah. I would be happy to do so. I would first start by saying that we did have cooperation projects between local branches of the Social Democratic Party and national level, but I was a part and project leader of a local branch belonging to the city of Uppsala, which is the big university city here in Sweden, where we had an exchange project with mostly youth members of the Fatah party. This was now up in about 10 years ago. But those project and exchange has been continuing even after my visits. I made, I think, 3 or 4 different trips to Palestine and the West Bank during that period of time. Your question is very broad, and I have so many answers to it. But it's very strong memories being in Palestine, meeting with Palestinian activists and Palestinian families and Palestinian young people who are struggling for a free state in a free country for Palestine.
Yeah, and Roshan, when we talk about Palestine, no way but to talk about the Israeli occupation and how it impacts the every bit and piece of the Palestinian people and their visitors. And the last time, I think 10 years ago, while you were trying to come back to Palestine at the Ben Gurion airport, they prohibited you and forced you back to Sweden. How that affected you, Roshan, and if you tried to come again or not?
Yeah, well, in very many ways, Osama, because we were looking forward to come to Palestine and continue to work with our friends there, work with empowerment of the youth, empowerment of the female people within the Fatah movement, and show solidarity to our continued friendship, right, between our people. We were stopped at the airport, and we were interrogated for very many hours, and there was no real accusation, or we hadn't done anything wrong. We were coming to visit, and we were completely open about what we were doing there. We were stopped, interrogated. We were also put in cells for a few hours outside of the airport before we were sent back to Sweden. Very, very saddened and very upset, and very unjustly treated. But this was, I would, in my view, only just a small example of the oppression and the restrictions that the Palestinian people face living under occupation. I've been counting the days and the years when this travel restriction of 10 years will be over. And I just spoke to my other friends who I was traveling with back then, and we said we should try to go back to Palestine on the same day or the same week 10 years later, which would be the next year, to demonstrate our willingness to come back to the country and to meet with our friends there that we have missed so much during these years.
Yeah, and also we are talking about your relationship and your friendship with the Palestinian people here in the occupied land. But we also have Palestinians who live in Sweden, the Palestinian community in Sweden. If you have relationships with the Palestinian community there, and if you tell us about the life of the Palestinian community in Sweden and how they are, integrated into the Swedish society.
Well, I grew up with a lot of people with Palestinian background, either from the Palestinian areas or from refugees who came from Lebanon, for example, and whose family moved back in the 50s to other countries than Palestine. And I grew up with a lot of people, and as a teenager, I always understood that they had come from war and from oppression and from the occupation, but it was not until I was a little bit older that I understood the injustice that the occupation brings to the Palestinian people. And well, what I can say from the Palestinians that I know, and who they are very active in organizing to increase knowledge about the occupation and the Palestinian cause. They are very well integrated in society in general and cherished members of the Swedish community. So what can I say? They are Swedes as anybody, and they also are a big part in making sure that the Palestinian agenda is on our agenda in Sweden as well.
Yes,
raising awareness.
Yeah, Roshan, and my last question to you. I know that you have many Palestinian friends in different parts of occupied Palestine. And if you like to say some words to your friends here before we finish our interview.
I would like to say one thing that I think is very important for me to be able to communicate to all my friends who might be listening to this, and all the Palestinian people who might be listening to this. I have had amazing visits to the Palestinian country, and one thing that is sure is that when I came to a Palestinian home and visited a family, I've never felt so much at home by the hospitality shown to me from the Palestinian people, even though the Palestinian people do not have a proper home that they can call their own. And I think that is quite remarkable, showing what kind of people you are. Uh, Being able to show your guests such hospitality, feeling as home as ever, but still you don't have an own home that you can control. So I would like to share that as one of my strong memories of always feeling so much, so close to the Palestinian people whenever I come there. And I'm very much looking forward to come back.
Roshan Kahande, activist of the Swedish Social Democratic Party, it has been a great pleasure having you on our program. Thank you very
I
much,
will,
Roshan.
I will do like this and just leave it there.
Thank you. Great honor for us too. Thank you, Roshan. Thank you. And thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal. Have a nice time.